And let me just make sure we're in the group. So I think we're good. Okay. Hey, everyone. I'm here with Rachel Miller-Lamb. She's joining us to talk about her experience in Hollywood and how writers can sort of get noticed and break in. So Rachel, you're a producer manager.
Indeed.
Yes, co-founder of Haven Entertainment and also of Film to Future. Is that right? The nonprofit? Very
Yep.
cool. Let's start out with, if you wouldn't mind just kind of giving us a quick overview of like, what was your path to where you are now?
Sure. The quick story is I went to high school and had no idea what I wanted to do. I ended up falling into film incredibly randomly and loved it and was like, this is a job. Are you kidding me? I can watch movies and meet writers. It sounds fantastic. Little did I know how much work it was, but it's still great. Ended up getting into Tisch. I did school in 3 years because that's what I could afford. Graduated, started at Endeavor when I was 20, was an assistant there for a year, then was an assistant at a company called Handprint Entertainment, which did talent for a year. We had Mariah Carey and Brandy and awesome people like that. And then worked at Red Wagon for a year and then left when I was 23 to start my first company, Tom Sawyer Entertainment, with Jesse Hara. And then in 2012, we merged to form Haven.
Cool. Yeah, I was commenting to people yesterday when I announced that we would be doing this, that you are young but have more years of experience than anyone else I know, and also that you have always been sort of on the forefront of things, like out of the box thinker, kind of ready to try new stuff. And I fondly remember, or actually maybe to my chagrin, remember that you were the first person who told me that I should learn Chinese because the China Hollywood connection would be blowing up. And I was like, oh, Rachel, don't be silly. And you were like, no, really.
I stand by that. I'm like, that was a good plan. Yeah.
It was, you were proven out on that one. So
yeah.
So you have a ton of experience both in management and producing and managing all types of both writers and talent and also directors, right?
Yeah, I mean, I would say yes, however, with the caveat that it's all creator driven. So we don't rep people who are, or me and Jesse, people at Haven do, but me and Jesse don't rep people who are like just actors or just directors. They have to have a writing component because we are a big believer in kind of creating your own destiny. And that's something you've known about me for a long time. You know, if you're just an actor or just a director, you're waiting for someone to say yes to you. And that's a terrible position to be in. Whereas if you are creating your own material to star in or direct, that's much more powerful. So I'd say yes on the actor, writer, director with the little asterisks of they have to all be creators.
Yeah, that makes sense. So since our group is largely screenwriters and people who are, you know, sort of on the verge trying to break into the industry, what is it that you would look for, say, in taking on a new client?
Great question. And I've gotten smarter as the years have gone by. I will say that. It took me a minute. I think, always original voice and having an authentic voice. You know, we always tell people or tell potential clients that we want to be able to send out a script to the town without a cover page, and executives should know the voice. They should be like, oh, this is Ben Schwartz. This is Jenny Ross. That, like, you should have such a clear voice that people will know who you are without a cover page.
Yeah.
That's kind of step one. And over the years, we have said that and modified it to, you have to be ready for a manager. And that's a very tricky thing to explain. You know, we expect our clients to deliver us at least 4 original pieces of material a year.
Wow.
Now, that could be, the good news on that is it could be a feature, it could be a play, it could be a short story, it could be a web series, it could be a TV script, it could be an hour, it could be a half hour. You know, over the years since we've been assistants, it's not just TV writers can only do TV or just feature writers can only do features. You can do everything. So the good and bad of that is that, you know, you can do everything, but we expect that kind of work ethic and that kind of new material, because if we're we work 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. We're always on call. We're always reading. If we're putting in that time, we expect it to be a job for our writers as well. And we need that kind of commitment and that kind of like, I'm going to get you this kind of new material. That means even if you're on a TV show you're writing, even if you have a feature you're writing, no matter what, you have to always be writing. And that's hard. Not everyone is ready for that, right? Like we have definitely signed people with authentic voices, but couldn't make the commitment, right? So over the years, we've kind of figured out that yes, you have to have a great voice, but you also have to be ready for the time commitment.
And
that answered the question.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's great. Do you, when you're looking at material, like evaluating material of say, a new writer, do you, other than voice, is there something else in the material that you look for? Like, is it, I know I can sell this, or I know I can get them work, or is it strictly like, this is so inspiring to me that I want to be in business with this person?
Jesse and I have always talked about, and ever since we started our first company, have talked about, we have to like a client and a piece of material enough that we are going to get 100 no's and be just as excited to make the next 100 calls. Right? So it's kind of like a feeling or, like a sense, a gut feeling, but you are going to get 100 no's. Every writer is going to get 100 no's at least, right? Are you passionate enough to keep making the next 100 calls? Because it just takes one person,
right,
to say yes. So it's, it's something we spark to, right? And that's kind of,
that's hard to define.
Yeah, it's a very hard to define. But do I want to work on something for years? Do I want to work on a client and talk to them all the time, right? Do they like my notes, right? Some writers don't take notes well. We've had that experience too. And then it's not a right fit. Like if you can't take notes and move and go from there, you're not ready for a manager.
Yeah. How do you typically, like, how do new clients typically come to you? Are they recommended by agents? Are they?
Truthfully, at this point, it's really referrals from other writers, usually writers who are our clients. We have found that and again, this is stuff that it's evolved over the years. Over the years, we found that the writers who we work with, they know our taste, they know our work ethic, they know what's expected. So kind of if they're sending us someone, it's someone that they feel fits the Jesse, Rachel, Haven, family. And like they know how tough we are, right? And some writers can't handle it. So generally, I will say like the greatest success is from other Haven clients.
Okay. Cool. This is something I think that doesn't get talked about that often. When you are meeting a prospective client, what happens in that meeting and what are you sort of trying to gauge? What's going to give you, the yes or the no on that person?
These are like all like gut feeling, stomach questions.
But there must be like red flags or things that you go, oh, I love this person,
I will tell you, I'll tell you a bad gut feeling.
Sure.
We had a potential client come in who oddly sent us 20 pages of a script. Like it was a TV script, but it was only the first couple of acts. Like she didn't finish it. And we were talking about, we were like, why didn't you finish the script? And she goes, well, I have a hard time finishing things. And I'm like,
that might be a bad sign.
So that was a bad feeling.
Sure.
It's a gut feeling, do we click with them? And that's like going on a date. It's kind of hard to, do we click? Do we think, they're open to suggestions and they're open to advice and thinking about it and responding to it? And two things can happen. And it's kind of the gut feeling question is one thing we'll sign them in the room and say, great, we want to start working. And a lot of times if we're unsure or if, they're a young writer without a lot of experience, we'll say, well, let's try working on a project together. let's have a couple dates. You might not like our notes. It might not be a good fit. And so a lot of times we'll just do one project together and just say, hey, do we like each other? Do you take our notes well? Do you like our notes?
Yeah.
So that happens a lot too, I'd say, especially more with younger writers. If we're not sure of kind of their commitment and their ability to take notes, that will happen a lot.
Yeah, that makes sense. And that just goes to, it sort of speaks to the idea that, you're constantly kind of auditioning for the job that you want. I mean, writers shouldn't assume that just because a manager or producer is interested in whatever project they have, that it's like, smooth sailing from here, it's all good. Because a lot of times the notes process is going to be more brutal than it was to write your draft.
And to me, it's like a good marriage, right? You're not going to click with everyone, right? That's totally cool. We want clients who want to be with us just as much as we want to be with them. So that's kind of a good first step of like, let's work on one project. Do you take our notes well? Do you respond to them in a timely manner? Do you do the work, right? Because we've had situations where we, said, let's work on a project, and the writer just never did the notes. And we were like, well, this is not a fit. I expect you to do the notes if I give them to you. Yeah. Or at least, sometimes they can obviously try a note and it doesn't work, but at least like go through that process. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Yeah. So we had a couple of write-in questions from yesterday. Let me just grab these 1 second. I know that somebody was asking, I think this was Richard, was asking, he's heard advice that, kind of today in the land of social media, that writers should be using social media to kind of present themselves. And the question behind it was, do managers actually look at it? Oh, really? 100%. So if you always, not to find a writer, but you'll hear of a writer, say, or maybe you're going to have a meeting with them, and so you'll look them up.
100%. Really?
So what kind of things on social media will make you go yay or nay?
Not so much a nay, but I will say like a lot of comedians use Twitter to try out one-line jokes. And that's, are they funny? That's really about like, are they funny in a short sentence? Because I always find that harder, right? It's harder to be funny in 140 characters than you would think. It's not as easy. So we'll kind of look at that for jokes. Are they funny? Also, are they engaged in the community of writers? I would say that specifically comes into play for comedy writers and book authors, which I work a lot with. Being a part of a community is very important because truthfully, a lot of writers, as get jobs from other writers, right? That's a huge way that's like, oh, I'm not available. Have you heard about this? Or blah, 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 blah. So being part of a community is kind of more important, right? So I'm not looking at like, this is a college application process and they're like at a party, right? It's like that happens if you're going for a job for sure. But for us, it's more like, are you engaged with the community? Are you funny in short, pithy, lines? Obviously for comedy, not for drama writers. We don't expect them to be funny, but are you engaging with the outside writer community?
And it's not about how many like followers they have. It's just like they're sort of part of the community. Okay, that's interesting. I have never thought of that, but that's a good point. Okay, so let's see. I had another question for you. When you the projects that you're producing, are they mostly just your clients' projects, or are you seeking?
No, we do. We actually do a lot of projects that aren't our clients. We don't always produce our clients. In fact, we usually don't produce our clients. Sometimes we do, but usually if we're sending out a project, like we're just sending it to other producers, we are, and this is very specific to me and Jesse, we're very protective of our clients. And if we don't help the project, we don't produce it. If we're a help to the project, if we're added value and our client wants us to, that's a different subject. But we do a lot of producing on stuff that's not our clients. And in a way, truthfully, it's a lot easier, right? A
Mhm.
manager's job is to protect the client. A producer's job is to protect the project. And sometimes those things are not compatible, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes you'll have to fire a writer. Sometimes the writer is not moving in the direction the network wants it, right? So in a way, sometimes it's just a lot easier to just produce something that you're not repping.
Is that is that the main reason why you would sort of make that distinction and not produce
Yeah,
things in the
and
place? Or
yeah, and sometimes like we respond to material that just aren't our clients. I'm
yeah,
producing a project. It's a 10-book series. We didn't have the right writer for it. So, I'm just producing it and we went out and found an outside writer. Like sometimes that happens.
yeah.
So it's very case by case, but we actually do a lot of producing of stuff that's not our clients.
And the stuff that you produce, are you looking more for sort of IP that you can be involved
Yeah.
with from the very beginning and adapt
Yeah.
into a screenplay? Okay, so you're not
Yeah.
so much
Yeah.
looking at spec scripts. No.
No.
What is it that why is that? Why is that funny?
um the business is really tough, right? Like, especially now, if you track what's selling, what's working, what's getting on the air, what's getting made, 99%, I'd say it's stuff that is IP, right? Like
Yeah.
that's just the business. So, to take on original piece of material that is very hard to do. But if you start building a kind of project that has IP and a writer, you start really building momentum. You're 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 going in winning the battle. Let's put it that way. So generally, if we're, and it's not always the case, but generally at this point, if we're producing stuff, it's stuff that's based on IP.
Got it. So it's more of a strategic thing because the pathway into getting it made for you feels
Yeah.
more likely or easier. Maybe not easier, but
Not easier, but how do I explain it? It's like there's so much noise, there's so much clutter. We're, unprecedented amount of TV and movies and Netflix doing features and Amazon's. It's so hard to cut through the noise, right?
Sure.
Anything you can do to fight that battle helps. And that includes most likely IP, right?
Yeah.
If it's based on a true story, if it's based on an article, that's just going to help your case.
And in the IP, do you look for something that already has an audience, or what is it about the IP that makes it appealing to you?
No, because I do a lot of stuff with books that didn't have a huge sales numbers, but and again, this is like the gut feeling question. It's usually a piece of IP that I feel like will connect with a wider audience.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm working on a book series now that hasn't been announced, but it's kind of, the idea is a Buddhist monk turns detective. And what I thought was really interesting and it's based on a 10-book series, so it's a lot of IP. What I thought was really interesting is this idea of kind of light and dark, life and death, right? That we haven't really seen before of a Buddhist monk. It's about connecting with the universe and life. A cop is not always about that, right?
Right.
Protect and serve. And sometimes you have to shoot people, right? Like it's an interesting dilemma. So it's really stuff that I feel like has a wide potential, but
Sure.
less about the book numbers.
Okay. And are you more interested in TV right now than film, or how do you feel about the sort of the market and the state of the industry?
TV.
Yeah.
I don't really do films anymore. I also think, and again, this is kind of a personal opinion. Through this nonprofit, I work with a lot of teenagers, and I think for better or for worse, everyone has a shorter attention span.
Yeah.
And I don't think people want to watch 90 to 2 hour movies anymore. I think kind of between the iPhone and I just think our brains, and again, this is a much, for better or for worse, our brains have gotten used to a lot of things quicker. And so I do think that, at least for the time being, TV is where you can make a great impact, and people want to watch many, many series of shorter seasons.
Yeah. Yeah. And how do you feel about shorter, even shorter form stuff, digital series and whatnot? Are people breaking in doing that or?
Yeah, I mean, we'll do some of it. We actually do a lot of digital TV series, but those are 30-minute or an hour episodes, just, on Go 90s or whatever.
Got it.
Here's what I'll say about web series. I think they're a great way to break in if you're doing it on your own, right? And so we'll do a lot of where clients will do a web series and then we'll kind of take it out to a bigger marketplace as a TV series. But for me to spend my time trying to set up a short web series, it's not really worth my time, in the sense that, like, the amount of effort to get a web series even on the air, I'd rather work with a client on a TV series where they can actually make some real money.
Right. Is anyone actually paying to make web series right now? Not really. Yeah.
Not a lot.
So it's more like do it for yourself and have it be like kind of your calling card.
Yeah.
And maybe you can sell the concept as
Yes.
a regular TV series. Okay.
Yes.
So if you could design your perfect prospective client right now, what kind of samples would they bring to you? What kind of personality traits would they have? And what would your strategy be for them in setting their career in motion?
Oh my God. Okay. Let me break that down. So definitely original material. Like, I do not want to read a 2.5 Men spec. Like, I could care less. So 100% original material. Personally, what I like now is a original TV show and a piece of what I call original writing. So it doesn't have to be, it could be prose, it could be a short story, it could be an article. Like, one of our clients has a really funny blog called 20 Nothings that we signed her off of. Now she's not doing the blog anymore, but so it can be a blog, it can be an article, it can be a short story, it can be anything, but just kind of an original piece of writing. Because we have found two things. One, a lot of up and coming writers don't really know how to write a pilot. So sometimes that's like a hard thing to read. But original piece of material is really about voice, and it's less about the rules. So for a younger writer, that's kind of a very good indication of their writing. Without being so like 4-act structure or whatever.
Yeah.
So definitely original piece of prose writing, for lack of a name for it.
And it's okay, you think, if they come to you with like two samples and that's it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But usually it's two, at least. Usually it's a script and something. Because anyone could have one great script. It's, can you keep doing it?
Right. And do you always look for some other type of writing? Or if somebody came to you with two pilots and they were like, great samples.
If they were that's fine. I just find, and again, especially with young writers, it's easier to get a busy exec to read a 4-page thing and say, hey, read 4 pages. If you don't find it funny, you don't have to read the pilot. But execs have, as you know, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pilots to read. And, there's an order, right? It's the shows they're covering, the, writers they've been recommended from friends. So new writers, like the last on the list, but you can say, hey, read 4 pages. If you like it, read the pilot.
Right. That makes sense.
So definitely 2 of something. It could be 2 pilots. And I think, and this is again a personal thing, I look for people with interesting life experience, right? People who have something to talk about. We just signed a young woman. She was referred to by a client of ours. She is Hamilton Jordan's daughter, who was Jimmy Carter's chief of staff.
Wow.
And she wrote a comedy, and it's a crazy funny comedy called Slutty Teenage Bounty Hunters. But the interesting thing about her is, so her dad passed away in the middle of writing his last book, and she took it upon herself to write it, finish it, sell it, and do his book tour.
Wow.
On her own, with no reps. And it was that kind of, not only is her pilot funny and she's engaging, but her work ethic is there. You know, she did this incredible thing and she was on Hardball and all these interviews, you know, on her own. And that kind of hustle is hard to, you know, fake.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
So that work ethic, it was so clear. And she's like super engaging and charming, and her pilot's amazing, you know, all that stuff.
Yeah. And then, so when you're sort of like pitching a client to somebody else, say you want them to have a meeting with your client or whatever, do you use kind of that story as part of
Yeah.
your, because you're like, this is kind of the package that I'm presenting
Yes.
to you.
Yes.
She's awesome. She did this thing and her writing's amazing. Right.
Yeah.
So it would be good. Yeah.
And
Go
she's
ahead.
interesting. She has an interesting life story, right? Like, I think, and this is a lot of writers, you know, I went to Tisch, but I worked my way through Tisch. I taught public school. I did all these things. You know, a lot of young writers, nice high school life, and then they go to Tisch and graduate, and they've never done anything or experienced anything, and they have nothing to write about, right?
Sure.
And they write these scripts that are like, and I can't even tell you how many I read of like a guy trying to figure himself out, and a girl who, like, you know, doesn't like him because he won't commit.
Right.
And I'm like, I have probably read 10,000 of those scripts.
Yeah.
Easily.
Yeah.
And to me, I'm looking for people who have something to talk about, that have an interesting experience. You know, we signed a writer. He was like a business executive and he would travel all over the world. He'd like go to Kenya to consult on a beer company. And that was his job. And he wrote on the side until we sold his first thing and established him. But he had an interesting life experience. He was meeting interesting people. I think what happens to a lot of writers is they don't have interesting experiences to talk about, and their writing reflects that.
Yeah, I think it's also another thing that doesn't get sort of talked about or advised to writers very often is that you do have to do a little bit of work with sort of figuring out what your sound bites are, like figuring out whether it's in networking or you got a meeting with someone, like what are the little stories that you can tell that sort of brand you, you know,
Yes.
so that person can walk away and be like, oh my God, I met this writer who, you know, grew up on a nudist colony or whatever it is, you know, because that's going to make you memorable. And also, if you can tell that story in an engaging way, then you're a storyteller to them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that goes back to the community part of what I look for, right? If you're part of a community, you're going out, you're pitching your 2-minute life story, right? That's super important. You know, you know this, but sometimes an executive will give you a 15-minute meeting. That's it, because they're busy, right? Can you get across who you are in that amount of time that they can turn around to their boss and say, hey, I just met this writer. It's Jimmy Carter's chief of staff's daughter, and she finished his book for him. That is a short, pithy, fucking interesting story, right?
Right. Yeah.
So that goes back to the community thing of a community. Not only is it good for writers to be in a writer community, but by going out and meeting people and practicing your story and engaging that way, it's, as you said, you learn how to kind of pitch yourself in 2 minutes, which is what you might get with an executive. You know, an executive could set up a meeting and they could say, hey, I want my boss to pop in for 2 minutes. And the boss could literally give you 120 seconds, right? Can you pitch yourself to your boss in 120 seconds?
Yeah. That's good advice. I think it's something that, you know, writers who are just trying to make their way into the industry don't think about. And then they get sort of the caught, you know, deer in headlights when they get the opportunity to actually meet somebody and network or make a connection. So it's good.
And look, and you know, unfortunately, the truth of the matter of this business is it's not just about writing in your room, right? You have to be social, especially in TV. You know, you're going to be with these people months and months and months and months and months and months of the time. People will hire you based if they think they want to sit in a room with you for 12 hours a day for 6 months.
Yeah.
Right? Like there is a social aspect, especially in TV, that not all writers are comfortable with, but is part of the gig, right? Yeah. Are you good in a room? Do you want, you know, are people going to want to hang out with you for that much time?
Yeah. Okay, if you can, I know we're
Yeah,
out of time basically, but give me one more minute. Tell me,
done.
if you had just signed a new client, what is your sort of basic strategy for starting to introduce them to people? Is it just general meetings? Do you look for something they can get hired on right
Well,
away?
we're going to assume the pilot's in shape to send out, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Generally we'll do another pass on the pilot, just to get it up to industry standards, but we're going to assume that step has happened. Um, I will do a couple things. One, I will pick 10 or so connector people and say, this is a new Rachel Jessie client. You love our taste. You're going to want to know this person. And, we have built I would say, great reputation of when I call you with someone to read, you're going to read it and they're going to be great. So I will usually pick like 10 people who are kind of the industry connectors. And then what I'll do is usually I don't love, so I'll pick 10 because I don't like 100 general meetings. It's a waste of time.
Yeah. And the idea there is just to get that writer to meet some people in the industry to
Yes.
sort of get their name kind of in the
Yeah.
circles.
And
Okay.
like getting people to pass around a script and talk
Sure.
about it.
Yeah.
But the other thing I'll do is usually be strategic of where I'm sending it. If it's during TV pilot season or just before TV pilot season, I'll pick 5 things that I think are the most likely, that they have a sample that is perfect, not kind of perfect, but perfect for a show. And then I will usually call and say, hey, look, your room isn't open yet. I don't even know if you're going to have availabilities yet, but this is one writer you should read now who's a new voice on the scene, and I think they'd be perfect for the show.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of the 2 first steps we do, and then from there,
Right.
the plan is tailored.
Got it. Okay. That's good.
Awesome.
It's
So
good.
hopefully that was
Yeah.
helpful.
Yeah, it was. I think it's good to give people kind of an overview of what to expect when they start working with a representative. So thank you so much for joining me. Thanks for taking the time to do this. I really appreciate it. And I know you're running off to another meeting. So I
Yes.
appreciate you taking the time, and I will talk to you soon, okay?
Awesome. Hope it was helpful. Bye,
It
guys.
was. Good. All right, bye.
Bye.